Raising the Bets is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to Raising the Bets. We're a Catholic couple raising 5 kids outside of Boston. Join us as we share the joys and challenges of marriage, homeschool, and our adventures near and far as we make sense of the world and experience the best parts of our culture. I'm Don Bettinelli.
And I'm Melanie Bettinelli.
So, Melanie, this week we, to let everyone know what's been going on with us, we welcomed your dad to visit.
Yep.
Your dad, not my dad, because my dad would be an episode of Mysterious World if my dad came to visit.
Yes, it would. Yeah, we have not actually seen my dad since the fall of 2019.
Or as I like to call it, the fall of the House of Scots.
When all of my mom and my dad and my sister all came to visit within like 2 months.
Melanie doesn't think that joke is funny. Melanie's maiden name is Scott, and Melanie's mom and dad and sister all came to visit successively, not all at once, like over the course of over a month or and a half or so. And so I call it the fall of the House of Scots. Will DeCat thought it was funny. He said he laughed out loud when I told him. So
I don't know why it's funny. I'll just leave it at that.
So anyway, yes, your dad is here to visit, which is really nice. And like you said, it's been 3 years. And that's the longest you've ever gone without seeing your dad
in my entire life.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was very weird to go so long without seeing my parents, my family.
I'm sure a lot of people have been in that boat with you.
So anyway, we're glad that COVID times was over. My dad was able to fit us in between his cataract surgeries and his physical therapy, and like he had a space of just 1 week with no appointments, and he's really like literally squeezed us in, and
right,
there is no time otherwise in his very busy.
In fact, I think he booked the plane tickets before we even like confirmed with us that it would be. I mean, we're not going anywhere, but it just before he even confirmed with us was like, I got the tickets already booked. So, which is nice. It's good. The kids love having your dad here. I mean, and in the 3 years they've grown a lot. So
he was very impressed at how tall they are now.
Yes, even Lucy's gotten up there with him. So yeah. So it's been nice. Yeah, I mean, he's your dad's kind of low key. He comes and hangs out, and he's up to do anything if we go do things. But
yeah, like all of my family, my dad is an introvert, and so he does not need a lot of like socializing and excitement.
He doesn't expect you to sit down and talk with him all the time. Not like my family. My family are all extroverts. Yeah. So yeah, they all require.
I mean, I do sit down and talk with him. Like, I don't just like ignore him the whole time.
Yeah.
But like the first night he came here, I stayed up and talked with him until he was ready to go to bed. And I'll probably do that like at least one more time before he leaves. And, I've had a few other longer conversations with him, but like, we're not a super, super like talky all the time family.
Yeah. I noticed that when early on in our marriage, when we would visit your family in Austin, and there were many days where we all just sat around the very large dining room table, which I love your family's dining room table. It's huge.
From Mexico.
It's a big, solid piece of tree. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. My parents got it in Mexico, like a lot of their furniture.
Yeah, it's like if a tsunami comes, you ride that thing out. Like
no kidding.
It's like a boat in and of itself. Anyway, we also would sit around the table and we'd all have our laptops, or there'd be a Scrabble game, or someone would be doing a crossword puzzle, whatever. We'd all just like hang around the table all day, chatting at times, not chatting at other times, reading books or whatever, just hanging out, which is very relaxing. It's very relaxing. I like that. There's no pressure, but it is different over the years. Your dad's visits have changed because in the earlier years of our marriage, he would come and do things. He would like fix things. And
since his stroke, he has been a lot less.
He slowed down a lot.
Dewey. Yeah. He's not as capable of doing things. He's a little bit more frail.
And he's in his 70s. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it's life. That's life.
It is.
So it's nice to have him here. And as is our custom, when he arrived that first night, he took us out to dinner at the Legal Seafood, which if you've been to the Boston area or you are from the Boston area, you know that Legal Seafood is the iconic Boston seafood chain, right? There's several of them. There's a local one near us, and it's always a great time. And although they used to have on the kids menu a half lobster that the kids could get, and our several of our kids expected that it would be there, and when it wasn't, they were not happy.
Yeah, I guess this is part of the whole everything's more expensive right now thing. So it's not available, but well, it was disappointing.
We eventually found things that they like. And I mean, Ben loved those mussels. We got him a mussel appetizer, and so it was nice. It's really a very generous of your dad, for one thing, to take us out.
My dad was a little bit disappointed. He's recently developed gout, which meant he couldn't have any shellfish. And he usually gets either, if not lobster, then he gets scallops or shrimp or something. Like, he really likes shellfish, and that's unfortunately off the table now.
It's off the menu.
He was a little bit sad, but he found a Mexican street cod that he said was really good. So
meat's off the menu, boys. You know what that's from, right? That's from Lord of the Rings, Two Towers, when the orcs were carrying Merry and Pippin off to Orthanc. Anyway, so
in the movie,
sure, not
the book.
Well, I don't want to get to it, but in the book they actually argue about eating them. But
they do argue about eating them, but I don't think use that line. That line is not there.
It's been a while since I've read the book, even though I've read it many, many times. I'll have to. If we
had Isabella here, she could tell us, because she's got the phenomenal memory.
Bella has memorized it. Bella is like, her reading is. What was it the other night? She read the Scarlet Letter in one night.
Yeah, a friend of hers had been talking about it, and she saw it on the shelf, and she was curious, so she picked up the Scarlet Letter before dinner. This was actually the day that we went out to dinner with my dad. The day he got here, and she picked it up and took it with her in the car. And by bedtime, she came in and she said she'd finished it. The fun thing was that it was my copy that I read when I was in college, and I took American literature. And so it had lots and lots of notes, annotations in the margin, like with my in-class notes, like from my professor, Dr. Kurtzinger. And Isabella said, "Oh, the notes were very helpful." So I had to share that on my alumni group, that my daughter had found Dr. Kurtzinger's notes helpful for the Scarlet Letter.
That's funny. On Saturday, our little town, Holbrook, Massachusetts, was celebrating its 150th anniversary, which, the grand scheme of things, I know that there are lots of towns older or whatever, but, it's our little town. We broke off from the nearby town of Randolph over election fraud. Well, tell the story.
Okay.
Because they related it at the parade, right?
Yes. Okay. The town historian, we have a town historian, self-nominated, told the story among other stories, but evidently Holbrook used to be East Randolph. And at the time, Randolph was renovating the hall, which is called Stetson Hall. I think it was the town hall, but it was like a big meeting hall. And there was something about the cupola, and there was a disagreement. And all the people from East Randolph, which is now Holbrook, sort of got together as a voting block, and they voted for wanting it done their way. And they won. They carried the vote, and then they left and went home. And after they were gone, the people from Randolph, the rest of Randolph, had enough people to make a quorum, and so they had another vote, and they voted it their way, and so it ended up being done their way, and that was the precipitating thing that led Holbrook to become its own town, to stop being East Randolph and to become Holbrook, Massachusetts.
Not exactly election fraud, but election tinkering, shall we say?
I love that story.
Yeah. So the lesson here is don't leave the meeting until it's been adjourned.
Evidently.
Yes. Once the meeting is adjourned, they can't hold another vote. That the vote becomes final. Don't leave the meeting till the meeting's been adjourned, or unless you've determined that there is not going to be a quorum after you've left. So anyway, that's funny. So, but there was a 150th parade, and the reason why that's notable for the podcast is I actually had to stay home and record podcasts with Jimmy.
That's not why it was notable. It was
but what was notable was the rest of y'all went to the parade.
The scouts all marched in the parade,
Of course.
and the girls troop was chosen to be the color bearers at the very front of the parade. So 3 of the girls carried flags. Ayane carried the American flag.
She's the senior patrol leader.
She's the senior patrol leader, and Isabella carried the Holbrook, the Massachusetts state flag, and Sophia carried the Holbrook town flag.
Right. Pretty cool, huh? In fact, I'm going to see if I can use one of the pictures either that you took or that Chris took for the episode artwork. Hopefully that'll work out.
It was pretty cool. That was the parade route was about 1.5 miles. Oh,
you looked at it? Yeah. Again, not a big town. 1.5 miles is about half the length of the town.
Right. They went from the CVS parking lot down to the school.
Yeah, we have one main road that kind of bisects town north to south, and so we have a CVS at the north end of town and a CVS at the south end of town. Literally on the border on both ends. And so they marched from the north CVS to the school, which is about the middle of town. And
yeah, they passed by town hall, which is about the halfway point.
No, the school's really about the halfway point of the parade.
The parade route.
Yep. So, and Anthony and Ben and Lucy were all there marching with Troop and Pack 56 as well. Their troop, and that was really nice. So, beautiful day for it. You and your dad.
We dropped the kids off.
Yeah.
And then we parked at the library, which
is across the street from the town hall.
Which is across the street from the town hall. I think perhaps we weren't technically supposed to park at the library, but we did anyway.
Yeah, whatever.
There weren't that many people at the parade that we were taking up the parking lot or anything.
Right.
And then after the parade was over, we adjourned to the library to wait for the scouts to
come back from the school. Nice. So, really fun. And the kids had a good time. I think. Did. Yeah. The girls were sore from carrying the flags.
Yeah, Sophie was complaining today. She said, my arms are sore. I don't know why my arms are sore. And I'm like, because you walked 2 miles carrying a flag?
No, the flag was in the flag holder, that holster strappy thingy that you wear. But even then, you're still holding the flag up.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're still holding your arms in front of you stiffly for a long time.
Right. So, yeah, that's good. Nice. So very glad for that. And then that was yesterday. And then today, another beautiful day. So I was telling you yesterday, Melanie, the local weathermen here in Boston were saying that we haven't had a rainy weekend day since all summer, since the beginning, June 21st. There's not been a measurable, there's one day that had a measurable amount of rain, and it was in the hundredths of an inch. Otherwise, we've had a beautiful summer, and this weekend was no different. And you decided, we can't waste this day inside. We need to go someplace outdoors.
Every once in a while, I just get really itchy to be.
You get a bug.
I do. I get really itchy to be outside, out and about. I need fresh air, sunshine, and nature, or I get really crabby. And so, at first, my thought was to go hiking in a forest.
Mm-hmm. See the foliage and all that sort of thing.
Exactly. The kids, however, were not really thrilled with this idea, maybe because they did a really long walk yesterday. And there was grumbling and complaining. Mm. And
also because last week we didn't watch anything in the afternoon. We did other things last Sunday. And so we wouldn't be able to do our usual watch a thing this Sunday either. I think that played into it too.
Yes. Anyway, I suggested the beach, knowing that our kids are more likely to be excited about beaches than forests, such as the way things are. And that actually garnered a lot more excitement. So we ended up going back to Nantasket Beach.
We went to the fantastic Nantastic Beach in the beautiful seaside village of Hull. We went to Hull today. We went to Hull and back.
So we walked down the beach. There were a few people swimming.
There were people swimming. Yes.
There were a couple small children swimming.
Yes.
No adults.
But there were
at least 24 people paddleboarding and surfing.
Yeah.
In wetsuits.
Well, yes.
It was chilly.
Yeah, it was kind of breezy down there. It was warmer here. It was a beautiful like 70 something degree day here at our house. But down by the water, it was a little colder. There was a little, onshore breeze.
When we first got there, I was thinking I really should have brought a jacket. But once we got walking, I was fine.
Yep. Now your dad, when he walks, he's like a man on a mission. Like you wind him up and he goes.
Story of my childhood. We would go on hikes. A lot of parents are very concerned. They're constantly looking back to make sure
everybody stay together. Don't get no one wander off. No one leave the trail.
That's not my dad. My dad once left me behind on a mountaintop, and I couldn't keep up with the pace of the rest of my family. This was when I was a teen, and I ended up collapsing on the side of the trail, and I had to wait like a good hour or more until they finished getting up to the top and then came back down because they did not wait for me. I was not thrilled.
Yeah.
Which is to say that my dad started walking down the beach, and Itasca Beach is long. It's several miles long.
Oh, it's miles long. Yes. Yeah. Quite a long way.
I think he walked about 1.5 miles down the beach, maybe slightly more. And he was going steadily enough that there was no way I was ever going to catch up with him.
Right.
The kids could catch up with him if they ran. Anyway, you got tired and turned around.
I got tired about a mile in. Yeah. A mile into the walk.
So then we walked another at least half a mile, maybe another 3/4
I maybe turned around at a mile, at 3/4 of a mile. It was pretty far down. And see, the thing with Itasca Beach is when the tide comes in at certain, like at the parts near the parking lot, the beach disappears. It's all underwater, and there's a seawall, and so you have to not be on the beach. You have to go up and walk on the sidewalk back. And I'm like, I want to get back there before the beach gets covered and all that sort of stuff.
Anyway, the kids had fun. Eventually we sent somebody running ahead to tell my dad that we were all turning around.
Right.
But I think it was I walked at least 3 miles round trip, and my dad walked more.
Because your dad walks like 3 miles a day.
He walks 3 miles a day, and he usually swim like at home. He walks 3 miles plus swims, partly for fitness, physical therapy reasons, and
yeah. So, but beautiful day, beautiful, Nantasket Beach. It kind of brings back, we've been saying like last fall, when we had our flood and we had to spend a few months in rental housing. 2 of them were by the beach. And so it was really nice. It wasn't summer beach weather. It was fall beach weather, and fall beach is actually really nice. Even early winter beach, it can be really nice too. And it's just different. And so
it's not swimming, but the beach is a nice place to walk and pick up shells. And
there's always so much going on. If you know what to look for, if you're looking for it. I mean, it's not just sand and water and rocks. There's a lot going on, but you got to keep your eyes open, and you get familiar with it, especially when you spend a lot of time there, like we did. You're familiar with the tides and the different moods of the ocean, and it becomes something.
Sometimes you find pools of hermit crabs, and sometimes you see seals, and sometimes you find dead seals
headless dead seals on the beach.
Sometimes.
Yes. So it was a nice walk on the beach today. So let's talk about food. I got to burn my saddle to make some seafood salad this week. I think it was Father Roderick who kind of it was his podcast, and I think he made a seafood salad thing or a imitation crab salad thing. And so I was like, I should make something. I know your dad, like you mentioned, couldn't eat shellfish right now. So I got the imitation crab meat, which is made of Alaskan pollock. It's fish, made to look and taste vaguely like crab. So, crab with a K, as I tell the kids. So I was going to make a crab salad or a seafood salad, but I didn't want to just like regular old seafood salad. I wanted something a little different. And you suggested maybe
Curried
Curried.
seafood salad.
So like, but not like the curried seafood salad you see on salad bars, but like an Indian style. Like, so it would have the Indian curry flavors. But we couldn't make it too spicy or too strong. Otherwise the kids wouldn't eat it. Well,
It turned out you didn't make it too spicy or strong, and none of the kids ate it anyway.
Right.
So
was kind of a
you
waste.
could have just made it like super spicy, which would have been better.
yes. And in fact, the leftovers, I ended up adding a bunch of sriracha to it. It was better. It was good. In fact, I think if I were to do it again, I would go like sushi style seafood salad, like a Japanese sushi style, because they use this same sort of thing in California rolls. This is what they use in California rolls.
You know, I've done that before. Like sushi in a bowl, where you make the sushi rice and you add nori flakes and
You could use the Kewpie mayonnaise, and you could add sriracha,
cucumbers
to
and
make it spicy tuna.
avocados. And,
Right. I did put cucumber in the salad. I added cucumber, celery, mayonnaise, Greek yogurt, and a little Dijon mustard, curry powder from Colchester Curry House, who has been a sponsor of Mysterious World in the past. And they're not a sponsor now, but I still, by the way, buy their
their curry powder is good.
curry powder mixes. They have various mixes. Jeffrey does. And it's a hobby thing for him. He does this on the side. It's his mom's recipes, I guess. Go check it out. If you like curry, colchestercurryhouse.com. Definitely worthwhile. I mean, I say that as a free plug. He's not sponsoring us right now. We're still buying it, but he hasn't given me any. We paid for it. It's really good. So added the curry powder, a little lemon. I think I added, or was it lime? I think I added lime juice to it. Anyway, it was good. But if I were to do it again, and I might do it again sometime, I might do it as a sushi in a bowl, and go more that route. And I think the kids might like that, because the kids like sushi.
Yeah.
So
that might actually be more popular.
Especially if I phrase it as sushi in a bowl. Like, I think the psychology of it is a big part of whether they like something or not. Like, if they are positive to it before they try it, then they're more likely to like it, I think, in general. It's all about selling it. All right. But a much more successful thing that I cooked was it the same night? I think it was.
Same night.
Was cast iron apple fritters. Now, this was a hit. Let me see if I can.
Oh yeah, they were good.
Find
They're
it here.
basically like donuts.
They're basically apple donuts, but they're the apple. So what you do is you take some Granny Smith apples, peel, core, cut into little pieces. You add them to. You have a all-purpose flour, sugar, baking powder, salt, ground cinnamon, ground nutmeg, and then you make a mixture of, and that's the dry ingredients, and then you put those all together, and then you have apple cider, egg, melted butter, and those are the wet ingredients. You mix them together. It makes a pretty lumpy dough, and there'll be chunks of apple in it, and I think that's one of the things that makes it different from, say, a cider donut. Cider donuts do not have chunks of apple.
Right. They're not apple donuts. They're just cider.
Right. So then you heat some, like a half inch of oil in a cast iron pan, and take a 1/3 cup scoop of the mix and drop it in, and you kind of mash it down a little, and you let it cook, and you flip, once it's brown, you flip it over, you cook the other side, and then move it off onto some papers. And then you make a glaze of confectioner, sugar, cinnamon, nutmeg, and cider. So you make that as a glaze, and then you just drizzle it over them once it's done. It was really good. I kind of wish they were a little crispier. They ended up not.
I think if we'd eaten them right away when they came out of the pan, they would have been crispier, but
Yes.
you made them before dinner as opposed to after dinner.
Right. Well, if it was after dinner, it would have been like late at night before we had them. But yeah,
Maybe next time just make them as like an afternoon snack or something.
I might have also, the oil might have been too hot or not hot enough when I cooked them. I don't know if they were done entirely in the middle. They might have.
They're a little on the doughy side.
Yeah, the first ones were like, the oil was pretty hot, but we have the glass top stove, and it's really hard to get it to maintain a steady temperature, and the temp kept dropping I should have cranked the heat up again. I mean, the cast iron's supposed to hold the heat, but it wasn't holding it as well. And it kept dropping. So when the temperature's too low, it doesn't, I don't think it cooks the interiors well. I don't know. In any case, it could have been more cooked on the inside, but the kids loved it. They were good. I think they were really good. They were great fall dessert. Yeah. I would make these I was thinking like if we ever had another like Court of Honor potluck thing where we're supposed to bring a dessert, I would totally do this. I mean, it's pretty straightforward and simple. I mean, just a little time consuming, but not, you do in maybe an hour. It was really good. The recipe, I doubled the recipe and it was made 20 fritters, which is, was plenty. So, yeah. So that was what we've been cooking. Let's talk, and I'll put a link to the recipe. That's an America's Test Kitchen recipe, that one. I'll put that in the show notes. Let's talk about what we've been watching and reading. So we watched the finale of She-Hulk. And so I know I was kind of getting a little down on She-Hulk about it. They were around the 6th episode. There were 8 episodes total, right? I think.
Right. And
right around the wedding episode, I got kind of down on it. But the last couple episodes, what do you think? Well, let's talk about the finale without spoiling too much. But one of the big shticks of the show is the fourth wall breaking, and they went for it in the final episode. They totally went
that
over the top in the fourth wall breaking.
I have to say that actually kind of sold me on the episode. Like they'd been doing it just, I feel like almost not enough in previous episodes. Like she talks to the camera maybe once or twice.
Yeah.
This I felt like really. It almost felt like it wasn't worth it. If she's just going to make a couple of asides, that's not really fourth wall breaking. It's kind of.
I mean, this went over the top. Like the other shows have done fourth wall breaking. Like remember House of Cards? He would kind of turn to the camera and address us, the Kevin Spacey character.
Right.
But this one, she literally climbed out of the TV at one point, onto the back lot at Disney. So. I mean,
it was a fun episode. I really liked where it ended up. I mean, it's still, as far as Marvel shows concerned, it's very much more sitcom-y. It's not really it's not the same level of quality as the other Marvel TV shows.
Right. This is my take on it is, it was funny. It breaks the mold of typical superhero stories. So at least they're doing something different. Okay. I was getting tired of the show, but the last couple episodes were pretty good. It's when I realized it's just a network sitcom with superhero character, I lowered my expectations and I was okay with it. If I were to rank all the Disney Plus Marvel shows, it would be at the bottom, honestly.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, Ms. Marvel, Hawkeye, all of those have been good. Even Night Monkey was,
Moon Knight
was really good. It was better compared to it. So it's not that it was terrible. It's just is not as good as the others. And the best parts of the show were the cameos, to be honest. When she was interacting with, I mean, is it a spoiler to say who she interacts with? I suppose it's a little bit. She interacts with other superheroes who show up. From people from other Marvel properties, three of them in particular who show up, and
those were honestly, the best bits.
Yeah, I mean, plus, what's the guy, the guy who plays her dad, who's from the TV show with Belky and from the '80s sitcom. Oh, I had it in my head. Now it's gone. Anyway, her dad is the actor who plays her dad was in that TV show, a TV show from a sitcom from the '80s. Perfect Strangers. Yes, that's what it was. Anyway, so in the end, there's probably going to be a season 2. I think they announced it, but I'm not sure.
So.
So I don't know. I mean, it was okay. It was. I would say overall, it was okay. It had its moments. So the other thing I wanted to talk about was the finale from Rings of Power, the Amazon series.
Which I still haven't.
You haven't watched any of. So I'm again, no spoilers, although, anyone who's read the Lord of the Rings who's even seen the movies knows this is a prequel to that. So you know what's going to happen. Or, you know, some people who survive and don't. There's some surprises in it. And what I'm surprised by are the takes that some people have come away with. Some people have been really negative about it. Oh, they've done violence to the canon.
Well, that doesn't surprise me because people
in general
have very strong feelings about Tolkien.
Well, I think people in general these days, fans, quote unquote, are very negative to adaptations in almost all circumstances, whether it's Star Trek, Star Wars, Marvel, Tolkien, whatever it is. There's a lot of negativity toward any type of adaptation. People like original things, people like Severance, people like Ted Lasso. There's almost universal acclaim for these original things. But anytime there's an adaptation, there's a lot of negativity. And I'm not sure what that says or why that would be. But in any case, I think
that oftentimes people they think that they want the same thing.
Yeah.
Or that maybe they do want the same thing and they don't really want. I think that in some ways an adaptation can't win because if it's too much like the original, whatever, then it feels unoriginal and trite,
derivative. Well,
but if it's too different, then it doesn't have the elements that people were expecting or wanted from the property. So I think the adaptations
they can't win those people over.
Right. There's just going to be a core set of people for whom it's either too similar or too different from what they want.
Right.
And so it's either going to be not original enough or too different and the thing is that what people are looking for in terms of like what they want to be the same is going to be different from person to person. So there's not like there's some sort of formula you can create.
Right. Well, and let's be clear. The art forms are different. A book and a movie or a TV show are different art forms, and you cannot just translate a book into a TV show. You can't. It's just
this is why in general, as a rule, I don't really enjoy adaptations because I kind of, when I like something, I like it for
what it was
in the original, and I don't really necessarily enjoy things adapted for a different purpose. Like I understand that it should be different. Like a movie is not a book, and yet usually what I love about a book is lost when it's translated to film, and therefore I'm just not as interested.
Yeah. Whereas I enjoy things for what they are, and I can hold them both things separately in my mind. I still love the books. I enjoy the movies. I enjoy the TV show. I enjoy them separately. So let me talk briefly about Rings of Power and people's reaction to it. One of the complaints has been, it does violence to the canon. Oh, it's not, they break the canon. And I have to laugh because the setting, as I've said before, is the second age of Middle Earth. And it is the least documented of Tolkien's writings. He wrote the least complete thing about this era. So everything that we have about this era is in rough form. And what most people would regard as quote unquote the canon is either what's in the Silmarillion or the appendices to the Lord of the Rings. And what was in the Silmarillion is, to put it in a crude way, Christopher Tolkien's fanfic of his dad's writings. I mean, he took all of his dad's writings and chose the version he liked best, because Tolkien, John Ronald, was always, until the day he died, revising his writings. He kept changing it and changing it and changing it. And so there were so many versions. And if you ever look at the multi-volume History of Middle Earth collection of his writings, you'll see how much he was constantly changing these stories. So
he was a tinkerer.
He makes George Lucas and J.K. Rowling look like pikers in comparison. He was always tinkering and changing. And in fact, I saw someone today posted on Twitter excerpts from a letter that he wrote to a publisher in 1951, a prospective publisher of the Silmarillion. He was shopping it around at the time, explaining what was going on in these stories in the Second Age. And what he wrote in description is, apart from the time compression from the TV series, which again, had to be done. I mean, didn't have to be done, but really it was a production decision that it's fine. I'm fine with whatever. But apart from the time compression, pretty much the same. They pretty much followed what he wrote, not letter for letter, word for word, but his description in his condensation of that story is contained in there in a way that it isn't in the Silmarillion or the appendices. The other difference is Galadriel wasn't mentioned in his story summary, whereas she has a huge role in the Rings of Power, which I'm okay with. She actually worked out pretty well in my point of view. There's a huge Christ's temptation in the desert sequence in the finale, which I really loved. I mean, there's just so much about this, especially finale, made me think about the Tolkien and the stories in a new way. And in some ways, it makes Sauron a much more interesting character than he was as just the Eye, a free-floating spirit in the Lord of the Rings. In Lord of the Rings is just the Dark Lord in his castle, the Eye looking for you, and just sort of this ominous evil presence. But in this, he becomes much more personal, much more. He was a person who made a decision for evil, the ultimate evil, and how did he become that way, and what was he like to deal with in person, and especially when he was hiding, because Tolkien writes about how he came to the elves in Eregion, the elvish kingdom, in disguise, in a fair form. Taught them lore on how to make the Rings of Power, and also took from them lore on the Rings of Power, and so on and so forth. And I thought it was fascinating, and I liked what they did. I really do. It's not perfect, but I liked it. So that's my take on it anyway. So how about, you said you haven't really watched much this week, but you've read a few things. Tell me about what you've read.
I finished reading Sally Thomas's Works of Mercy, which was a really delightful novel. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm hoping she writes more, maybe even more with the same characters, because the way this story ended definitely left room for. It ties up the themes thematically, but it left room for more exploration of the characters. So the it really did sort of thematically explore the Works of Mercy. And what I really liked about it was that it kind of showed how doing the Works of Mercy as an obligation, just as we're commanded to do these things, to feed the hungry, to visit the sick. And sometimes we do those things out of a sense of obligation, not out of love so much as like duty. But it really showed how sometimes doing things out of a sense of duty and obligation can grow into love and can connect us to community, especially when we're disconnected. I really loved how the protagonist at the beginning is very disconnected. She's a widow. She goes to church, but other than that, she doesn't really have connections to the community. She was an immigrant who married into this community, and she doesn't really belong. But doing these Works of Mercy eventually knits her into the community in a much deeper way. And I really loved that. As somebody who myself have a tendency to be, introverted, and the main character was definitely sort of an introvert, bookish type. I liked how she came to get entangled with various characters, some of whom she didn't really like very much at first. I feel sympathy for that, because that's kind of me. So I highly recommend Sally Thomas's Works of Mercy. I think it's, I can't remember the press. It's a small.
There'll be an Amazon
press,
link
but
in the show notes. Yeah,
it's available on Amazon. Then I also this week read Fire and Hemlock by Diana Wynne Jones, which is a standalone novel. I've read some of her other series before, the Crestomancy series and the Howl's Moving Castle and sequels. This one was a standalone novel, fairly large, based on the Scottish ballad Tam Lin, which is about the guy who's been stolen away from the fairies and the woman who has to free him.
Okay.
In the ballad, a young woman, often called Janet, has to hold on to him while the queen of the fairies makes him change shape multiple different ways. This one was a very interesting. It's set in England, and it's in modern day England, and it follows the protagonist is a young girl. I think she's like 10 or 11 at the beginning of the story, and it follows her until she's about 19.
Mm-hmm.
And I really liked it. It drew on it had a lot of literary allusions, not only to Tam Lin, but also to Thomas the Rhymer and a lot of other English mythologies. And my favorite, she used as one of the structural elements, T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. Not The Wasteland, the Four Quartets, which I really loved. Like there's this very subtle, but at a few points, if you know the Four Quartets, very noticeable allusions to it, which, Eliot's my man. So that was fun.
Cool. Awesome. I was noticing as she died in 2011, the same year that her husband died. He must have died after her, I think, that same year, though. She died of cancer.
Yeah, she was a great novelist.
Yeah, I was curious of all the things she wrote, but she wrote quite a lot.
She was very prolific.
Yeah.
I've only scratched the surface of her novels. But I'm enjoying, like, slowly making my way through her oeuvre.
Yep. Cool. Awesome. So, for our Mass homily section of today's episode, today the Mass was celebrated by Father Joachim, who at our parish, who is a Cape Verdean priest. I noticed, I mentioned to Melanie, to you after Mass, that we had 3 different countries represented, in the sanctuary today. The celebrant was from Cape Verde, the cantor was from Haiti, and the lector was from, I'm not sure where in Africa she's from. I think she might be Nigerian, but I'm not sure. But I know she's definitely from Africa.
I want to say Ghana, but I'm not 100% sure that's correct. I know I've heard it before, and I'm blanking.
Yeah, but that's our parish. It's just awesome how our parish has these immigrants from all these different countries. It's really cool. So you may recall that the readings were, the first reading is about the battle against the Amaleks and the Amalekites, I guess, and Moses, whose hands in the air, they win, hands fall down, they lose, so he keeps his hands up. And then the gospel is the widow and the unjust judge, who she bugs until he gives her a just decision. So
both of them are about persistence in prayer,
right? And so Father said, the Exodus reading was one of his favorites as a kid because battles. So it's interesting how they're traveling through the area of the of Amalek, okay, their region on their way to the promised land, and they go to battle. And Moses tells Joshua, pick out certain men and go out and engage the Amalek in battle. And so and then Moses goes to the top of the hill, and with Aaron and Hur. If you ever say Aaron and Hur, I think of Aaron Burr. Aaron Hur, sir.
Okay.
He's the bursar. So, and it's this interesting thing about how, when as long as he's got his hands in the praying, hands raised is prayer. As long as Moses is praying, they're winning. And I was thinking about that, like, so in the sense, Joshua wasn't in command of the battle. God was.
Right.
It didn't matter what strategy or tactics Joshua engaged, really, in the end. What mattered was Moses' prayer.
Well, you see this a lot in the Old Testament, though, where it's really not to us, Lord, but to your name give the glory, because God wins. Like when they take the city of Jericho, they just march around the walls,
right,
blowing the horns, and then eventually the walls fall down.
Right.
They don't actually they don't have any siege engines. It's just the power of God represented by the ark and the people trusting in God.
Right. Exactly.
One of the things Father noted is that we don't get a blow by blow account of the battle on the ground. All we get is the look at the battle, the spiritual battle on the hilltop, where Moses gets tired and the battle starts to go badly for Joshua and the army. And then Aaron and Hur come and they hold up Moses's hands so that he doesn't fail.
And there's another parable in that, which is we support each other in prayer. It's communal prayer. It's praying together.
Right. Father made the point, and I really liked this, that, sometimes we can't pray for ourselves. Like, we need other people to pray for us.
Right.
We're tired. We're exhausted. We're sick. We're spiritually lost. And it doesn't matter really in terms of if we have a community praying for us, we're like Aaron and Hur physically lifting up Moses's arms.
Right. Lifting up his prayer in that sense.
Right. So that prayer is not just an act of like individuals. It's the act of a community.
Right. And Father said, like, keep praying. Even if you feel like God's not answering your prayer, keep praying, because sometimes the answer to the prayer comes on that next attempt when you've given up, you're ready to quit, and you say one more time, like just one more for you, Lord, just one more, and maybe that's when you get your answer. And sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes the answer is no, but then you get your answer. And Father said something else which was very interesting. Good things, they say, good things come to those who wait. Better things come to those who pray while they wait. Don't just wait for good things to come. Take an active role by praying for it as well. So I thought that was really good. And I love this gospel because you have this widow and you have this judge, and he neither feared God nor respected any human being. He sounds like a corrupt judge, okay, or unjust is how he's often described. And the widow in the town says, render a just decision for me against my adversary. She's not asking for special treatment. She's not asking for him to be biased in her favor. She knows she's in the right. She knows if the judge were just to rule, he would rule in her favor because she's in the right. And he's refusing to rule, which says to me, he's probably been bought off, or he's corrupt, or maybe he just can't be bothered. But it sounds to me like he might have been bought off, right? But eventually he thought, while it is true that I neither fear God nor respect any human being, I shall deliver a just decision for this widow, lest she finally come and strike me, which is awesome because it's like, look, I'm not afraid of nobody except this widow who might come and hit me. I don't want to get whacked by her. And I think it's funny that he's afraid of the widow to come in, who might come and hit him. I just thought that was amusing. So, if even an unjust judge will rule, or dishonest judge will rule justly, if you bug him enough, how much more will God, who is just and who is good, answer your prayer if you keep persistent in prayer. So, and it's not like our persistence like change, like God said no, and then on our 100th ask, like the kids, oh, for crying out loud, okay. It's not like that. It's not like we wear God down. It's we wear our hearts down.
Because what prayer doesn't change God, it changes us. Like, what God wants is for us to align our wills with his, to align our lives with him. And so by persisting in prayer, turning constantly to God, we are turning our hearts towards him. And
we're changing ourselves.
We change ourselves. And perhaps over time, we come to realize more deeply what God's will for us in the situation is. I mean, that's sort of the ideal, is to align ourselves with him.
The more we pray, the more sensitive we become to the prompting of the Holy Spirit, the Holy Spirit speaking to us. And so there could come a point in your prayer where you realize, you know what? I'm asking for the wrong thing. or you know what, this isn't God's will, or I'm asking in the wrong way, or even just I need to amend my life. I need to set this aside and go and fix this thing in my life, or whatever it is that God is trying to say to you. But the more we pray, the more we hear. I mean, this has been convicting to me, frankly. I realize I'm not praying enough. I need to start praying, reading the scripture more than I have. My prayers become a little rote and stale, and I need to mix it up a bit and really start opening up my heart again to God and have him speaking to me. And I need to take the time to do that. So, I mean, I love the story, amuses me because of this image of the widow coming whacking the judge with the stick, but it's also convicting. And so I'm glad for it. So I think that should do it. Any more on that? I think that was about it. Yeah. That's it. All right. So before we go, I want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create Raising the Bets, including Daniel C., Barrett H., Philip D., James C., and Kyle M. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue Raising the Bets and all the shows at StarQuest, and you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. You'll find links from our discussion in our show notes at sqpn.com/bets. That's BETTS. Send your feedback at our Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Send an email to bets@sqpn.com or visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. Write a review at Apple Podcasts and share the podcast with your friends to help us grow our community and reach more listeners. Until next time, I'm Don Bettinelli.
And I'm Melanie Bettinelli.
Thank you for listening to Raising the Bets on StarQuest. Here's another show on the StarQuest network you're sure to enjoy. The Secrets of Doctor Who. Find the show wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/Doctor Who.